Any other questions?
Was the difference between the city and I&M's valuation, I mean, great? And
I think all along we were hopeful that we'd be able to resolve some continued service by I&M, given the fact they're somewhat of a natural service provider, and they've done a good job. But the difference was significant enough, we felt it necessary to take it to the market to test that value.
now, under a new provider, I mean, there's the possibility that some city residents would have a different power provider than others. If there was a switch, I mean, because this isn't the entire city, obviously.
Correct. The city's grown substantially since 1974. This is the map of the service territory in question, so it's possible, but there are multiple providers throughout the state, but yes, that's possible.
Now, are you looking for a company that would have a relationship with the city like I&M does, where they provide the personnel, they update infrastructure as necessary, or how do you envision this provider? How deep a presence do they have in the process?
I'll take that one. The RFI is going to be structured to give us full flexibility in who we choose. Part of the flexibility comes in with how the services are going to be provided. One way is to be a wholesale customer that buys power from, let's say, a provider like I&M and provides it directly to our grid. Second thing is to buy it off the grid. Third thing is to see if there's managed competition options available. We are looking at multiple options to see what is the best relationship for the city to have. But the bottom line is going to be, it has to be reliable, cost-effective, high-quality service. And that's, whatever it takes to get there, that's where we're going to be.
So under this, is there a possibility that the city would have to create its own electric utility?
We already have an electric utility.
I mean, expand. It's very small right now.
It is very small right now. And the goal has always been to see, what is the best possible match to manage this utility. If it's going to be an expansion of the city utility, so be it. But we want to make sure that the private sector are active partners with us in identifying what the best solution is to this problem.
About how many people do you think you'd have to staff to provide the kind of service that I&M provides, if you were going to be your own electric utility?
Again, that's so far away from a decision point right now that we have not made a determination of that number.
How do you make a decision in your negotiations with I&M without having information as fundamental as how many employees will we need to hire to run the utility?
We conducted quite an extensive set of, I would say, and I'll defer to Tim on this one, but we spent a lot of time researching several other communities that run their own utilities. We've also talked to several other service providers that provide independent power services to municipalities. Based on feedback that we've received from all of them, we truly believe it's possible to be competitive with I&M service levels and rates.
We've also evaluated other systems around the country relative to the value of the system to the service provider. In the course of those discoveries, came to our own conclusions as to what we think the appropriate value of the system should be, should I&M wish to continue that service. And suffice it to say, our estimate of the value and their estimate of the value didn't match.
So what was our estimate of value?
Our estimate of the value was a range, but those ranges did not touch each other.
Is it safe to assume the city is not looking at power generation?
I think that's safe to say. And the one thing to keep in mind, the world of 1974 was a different world than today. In 1974, if you didn't generate your own power, you probably weren't in the power distribution business. That's not the case today, but the ability to buy power off the grid presents a variety of other options for municipalities.
So under the terms of the lease, after it ends, the city would need to reimburse I&M for the infrastructure that it put in place here?
That's correct.
Okay.
And there's a methodology for doing that in the lease.
Okay. Can you summarize what the methodology is?
Original cost less depreciation.
Okay.
Is there a number on that at this point?
Don't have that number, Ben.
Bob, that's just in the area that he's talking about here.
Right.
Is that essentially Fort Wayne 1974?
It was a service territory of Fort Wayne City Light and Power in 1974. I couldn't tell you it was exactly Fort Wayne's city boundaries in 1974.
Until this situation is resolved, would the city be putting any talks of use of the light lease or the trust fund on hold? Does this take precedence over?
It'll be on hold.
Yeah, the original intention of the light lease fund was to ensure continued
Right.
reliable electric service. That's exactly the purpose for which it would be put.
Would the amount of reimbursements have to be taken into consideration for other options that might be undertaken? As far as the amount of what you're going to have to give back to A&E or AEP, or would that be able to be taken into consideration?
If I understand your question correctly, of course those proceeds would be available to reimburse, to provide revenues to the city for purposes of reimbursing I&M. But I think too, the ultimate use of those proceeds will depend also on the nature of the service provider that the city would engage. It's quite possible others would be interested in serving this territory and would provide the funding necessary to reimburse I&M. That's certainly an option that's available to the city.
In your request for information or request for proposals, would the term of service be up to the prospective vendor?
It could be up to the city. That
So
would be
what are you
a-
looking at as the term of service in this?
It's not hard to guess at this stage. I think it's fair to say that any service provider that's going to be asked to invest substantially in the system would want a period of time to recoup their investment. To the extent the city would simply engage opposed to an advisory capacity, then perhaps that period of time wouldn't be as critical. We'll find that out in the RFI process.
Do you think that there will be, like maybe a mandatory renewable component in the power generation that vendors would bring to you as a proposal?
Quite possible. We need to go out and explore the market and see what the RFI brings us.
I think the city has a number of green initiatives that it obviously wants to continue to pursue regardless of the service provider. That will be an important element.
Does anyone have the current balance of the trust fund, most recent?
I think we're trying to identify the exact amount because of the market fluctuations. I don't know the exact amount right now, but we will get that number to you.
What happened in the market today? What's better?
It has dropped significantly over the past year, obviously, as have most portfolios. There still is a sufficient amount of money there, though, to help us. Help us in a position where we needed it. Obviously.
Do you feel the trust fund balance now would be enough to cover any reimbursement? So there wouldn't, I mean, there would be.
I don't want to speculate. We haven't made that assessment.
Okay.
Well, we certainly want to thank you all for coming. I'm sure that Counselor and Kumar would be available for individual interviews as well. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you all.